All right, so organizing an ad analysis paper, body paragraphs. As you can see in this first slide, this includes the document that you also have on Blackboard that essentially walks through to give you an overall idea of how the whole paper should look. For the introduction, which is all one paragraph, you'll have an attention grabber, you'll have background information, and you'll have a two-part thesis. Within the background, you are going to be mentioning whatever your product is, and then specifically both of your ads, including what brand you're going to be talking about, the year, and a very brief description. So for instance, if we're using the shaving ads that we've been looking at for this particular example, our brief description would be that for the 1901 ad, we have a baby shaving its face, and for the, I believe it is 2015 Braun ad, we have a picture of a gorilla and a man. Very brief in that introduction, just to establish what it is we're looking at and then what we are going to compare. The body of the paper itself, which will start at paragraph 2. Remember, we've got an introduction, then we move on. We are looking at least 6 paragraphs if you're doing an adequate comparison contrast. It could be more, but you should be looking at least 3 and 3. So ad 1 will have about 3 body paragraphs. Each one of the paragraphs is going to be separated by the main feature of analysis, which we'll be talking about in just a minute. And within each paragraph, you will have a series of details and analysis explanation to show why they support that particular reading view, something that you might see written in a couple of places, the focusing adjective that you use in the topic sentence to set this whole thing up. This structure for comparison contrast walks you through your first item, then you transition to the second, and in the second ad is where you refer back to things you've said earlier to set up your contrast. It is also possible, and you might have seen in your book or in other places, a comparison contrast where it moves back and forth. So it will go add 1, add 2, add 1, add 2, add 1, add 2. That structure is a little more difficult to set up and requires something to be far more parallel and in line. And we only have 1 semester to get everything in order. So this basic structure in particular will work for pretty much any kind of comparison contrast you're asked to do. And it has the most natural progression, so it's the easiest to set up. So body, and then of course conclusion at the end. So just to remind you briefly, here are the 2 shaving ads that we have been looking at. Of course, we have our shaving baby and our man and gorilla. When you get started on this, you'll recall that one of the first things that we did was, using those questions in the book, come up with a list of all the details that we notice. So some of these are going to be familiar, that we have the chubby smiling baby, the baby clothing in particular, that we have this lace trimmed cap with ribbon, the white dress, the bib smock, the tiled bathroom, etc. So all of these details gathered together. You will notice, however, here, what I've done is I have tried to sort these into different categories. So what is supposed to be the appeal of this ad when we look at this baby? And we've decided that one of the things that might draw in potential buyers is the idea that this is luxurious. And when we look at this, the fact that it is 1901 and we have a chubby baby. So clearly this baby is healthy, this baby is well fed, he is not starving. Having enough food at that particular time in order to have such a chubby baby would be sort of a sign of prosperity. The clothing is a sign of prosperity. The lace trimming is completely unnecessary for dressing. The ribbon is unnecessary. These are added adornments that let us know that this baby is probably from a wealthy family and well cared for. The white dress smock and the bib let us know that probably this baby is perhaps preparing to go out to some function with his parents, or perhaps he's going to have his portrait taken. So well dressed, lots of detail in the clothing, the background of well laid tiles all suggest that this is a luxurious product. We have the idea of safety. The basic fact that there is a baby involved holding a razor suggests that the parents are not worried that this baby is going to cause injury to himself while he is sitting there gripping this sharp object. The idea that you can shave yourself ties back to the idea that this razor was recently invented, and most people at this time, if they don't have access to the Gillette safety razor, are using a very sharp open blade razor, which is dangerous. We also have down here in the text that they have emphasized that it is a safety razor. Another possible category here would be that it is easy to use. Perhaps you might have heard before, particularly in reference to shaving soft as a baby's bottom, the idea of the smooth, unblemished, wrinkle-free, very velvety soft baby skin. And they're trying to invoke that idea in you by showing this baby shaving. The idea of beginning early, again, it kind of ties in with safety and builds a bit on that the baby is alone in this picture and unharmed and happy to be holding a razor blade near his face. Shaving yourself ties into that same idea as well, that it's so easy that even a baby can do it. And the no stropping, no honing, of course, you don't have to maintain this razor in the same way that you would a straight edge blade. Oh, and I forgot to mention, go back. And I titled this one Man versus Baby, and we're looking at devolution. Now we have evolution. Instead of reverting back to the smoothness and carefreeness of a baby, now we are going from beast to man if we set up this other contrast. You'll notice that where the picture of the baby was very light and used lots of whites and bright colors, there were some soft yellows. This one is meant to be a tough sort of picture. We have the silverback gorilla here, which this is an area where context is important, because if you've read much about gorillas, you will know that silverback gorillas are known for being very smart. They are, this type of mountain gorilla is of the sort that has been successfully taught sign language. They live in communities, they're protective of their families. even without learning human sign language, they have their own forms of communication. But that's not what this ad is trying to get us to think about with this black background and this kind of sinister looking picture. They're trying to get us to focus on this idea of strength and toughness, and picture in our heads the idea of sort of the alpha male gorilla, which is also known for violence because of its huge size and body strength. And there have been in the past, on rare occasions, incidences at zoos where they can literally rip the arms off of a man. So we're going for, instead of intelligence, we're going for toughness with this particular picture. And that is in relation to our man because he has a strong jaw and he's scowling and he has this slight wrinkling that indicates age and wisdom, and he's wearing a black leather jacket that also carries with it its own set of baggage about the kind of image we have of someone who's wearing black leather. So very tough, very strong, very serious. We have the idea of how effective it is because the picture suggests, in using the words before and after, that this particular razor can shave all of the thick, coarse hair off of a gorilla and leave a smoothly shaven man. We also have the idea that it is easy to use because, first of all, if we ignore the fact that gorillas are very intelligent, if you think about the other images we have of mountain gorillas and silverbacks as knuckle draggers, they can walk upright, they tend to walk on all fours. So if you carry through that idea of this gorilla as a knuckle dragger, as a giant monkey, as not being terribly smart, and yet the gorilla in this image we are encouraged to believe has used this razor to transform himself into a man. The fact that it is electric, makes it easier to use, allegedly. And then also we have the caption at the bottom that you are going to bring out the human. So the gorilla is an untamed, vicious beast. And if you have this razor, it is so easy to use that suddenly you will become human. So if we take these two sets of details and look at them side by side, we can see what our points of contrast are. And the way that these are broken down, you'll notice that we have categories 1, 2, and 3 on each side. So each of these could be its own paragraph. And of course, you would use your list of details to remind you what you want to talk about. You would fill them in more thoroughly, and then you would explain what it is we are supposed to do with that. Now, the other thing that I do want to point out here very quickly is that if the man versus beast angle is your second ad, and oftentimes if you're using an older and newer ad, it makes sense to start with the older one first. When we begin our transition into talking about how this ad is tough, for instance, we might refer back to how the other one was luxurious and light. So while the first Gillette ad had a light, happy picture of a chubby baby, the Braun ad focuses on toughness. And now I will talk about toughness. When I get down to the section about it being effective. I might mention how the other ad had the baby shaving, which interestingly enough suggested that there was no hair there at all to deal with, which is kind of odd. And then I'm going to talk about how this one suggests that you can shave a gorilla and make it look like a person. When we get down to the ease of use, again, that's going to be kind of a continuation from its effectiveness. It's going to build on it. And I might mention again how where before we were talking about baby smooth skin, now we are talking about someone who is tough and rugged and has multiple scowling wrinkles that he is shaving around effectively.